You know, Japan is absolute proof that quantitative easing or monetary stimulus doesn't work. They've done it for the longest time, and it's never really got their economy off the ground. In fact, their economy has just been gone downhill slowly, and you know, it's demographics has actually been working against the Japanese. Their aging population and more. Their economy has been almost in a depression for years, and they have done economic stimulus, tremendous economic stimulus. Now the United States, you know, they're involved in the quantitative easing, or were involved in quantitative easing, and quantitative easing does work to a certain degree. It keeps you. It will keep the economy. It will fight the effects of deflation to a certain degree because it is pumping liquidity into the system. But it does not. It's been proven that it does not create an economic recovery. You can wish for an economic recovery from economic stimulus, but you'll never really get a total economic recovery. The best you can do is keep deflation at bay. Now, if you withdraw the stimulus, what happens? You start to slowly head back toward the deflation again. And this is what's happening because they withdrew the stimulus a while ago now in the United States. Quantitative easing's been cut back. They cut their quantitative easing programs. And they haven't had them for a while. And but what's been keeping things afloat is Japan and also the ECB. The ECB's been pumping $80 billion a month into the market, but that's about ready to come to a stop. When all this comes to a stop, what's going to happen is you're going to hear a loud screeching sound, you know. Tires going, ee, you know, like a car, like when it goes, ee. And what do you hear just after that? After a loud screeching sound? You hear a loud bang. That's the accident. That's it. And that's what we're heading to right now. We're in that loud screeching sound because they've hit the brakes. Quantitative easing has hit the brakes, and you hear the loud screeching in the United States. And now Mario Draghi is going to announce the tapering of their quantitative easing program, and what's going to happen is next you're going to hear the loud bang, and that's going to be the effect of all of this tapering, all of this cutting back that they're doing. The crisis is going to come. That crisis is going to force them to go back into the quantitative easing again, but this time it's going to have to be bigger because the problem's going to be bigger. So what's going on right now is the mortgage rates are dropping to the lowest point since the election. And they're doing this to try to move houses. But it isn't working. It says borrowers are barely budging. Borrowers are not moving. It's like they're constipated right now. They're all tapped out. They're simply saying that they're tapped out. It says the lowest mortgage interest rate since November did little to encourage people to refinance their homes or take out new loans to buy a home. Nobody's buying anything right now. Money's tight, and this is because of what the Fed's doing with the tapering program and what the ECB is getting ready to do. Now, the European economy's been picking up a little bit, and it's only because Mario Draghi's been pumping $80 billion a month into the European economy. Well, what do you think's going to happen when Mario Draghi hauls those horns in and he pulls back and doesn't dump $80 billion a month into the European economy? Europe is going to go back into a deflationary funk. And this is the reason why houses aren't selling here, is because we've already tapered back. And what's going to add impetus to this is the Fed, when they try to sell their toxic balance sheet, this actually pushes things in the opposite direction from quantitative easing. It makes things much worse. So what's happening right this minute while we're talking is is the housing market in the United States and in Canada is getting ready to roll over. This is going to be a tremendous drawdown on the economy. It says total mortgage application volume rose just 0.1% seasonally adjusted last week from the previous week, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association. Volume was nearly 22% lower than a year ago. Hear that? They've lost 22% in 1 year. Total mortgage applications. 22% drop-off. That's huge. That's absolutely huge. And it's just beginning. This is a tremor. Like, if you're going to have a total earthquake or volcano or anything, and you hear the ground start to tremor first, you know you're in for it. And that's what this is. This is a tremor. It says a sharp drop in rates usually prompts homeowners to refinance, but those applications just rose 2% for the week and are still down 40% from the same week a year ago. So, refinances is down 40%. 40% 1 year, a slide. Man, we're going into a recession. And this isn't even they're going to call it that's why I said recession. They're going to call it a recession. Actually, we're already in a recession. We're heading into a depression. This is the real truth of the matter. While they've been spouting off this business about we're in a recovery, there is no recovery. We're going into a depression. It says a sharp drop in rate. Okay, so I've read that already. And it says the average contract interest rate for a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage with conforming loan balances of $424,000 or less decreased 4.12% from 4.14%, with points remaining unchanged at 0.38%, including the origination fee for an 80% loan value to ratio loans. Last week, the mortgage rates dropped to their lowest level since the week of November 2016. So the mortgage rates, they've dropped them right down to the floor, and nobody's buying. This bodes bad for the housing industry here in Canada and in the United States. This is very bad. What's happening is liquidity is drying up. Simply put, this is what's happening. Liquidity's drying up from underneath the housing market. Buyers are disappearing. There's no bid on any of the homes. So if you're going to get your house out there for sale, the only way you're going to sell it is to put it cheaper than everybody else's house. Well, this is going to create everybody doing the same thing simultaneously, dropping their prices down cheaper and cheaper until they find buyers. And how far are they going to drop down? Like there's a hollow spot. So the house prices are up here. And there's a hollow spot down beneath here before you come down where you hit the buyers down here. Way down here. What's going to happen is this is all hollow in here. So you can drop down to here and you still won't sell. You drop down to here, you still won't sell. You're not going to sell until you get down to the level the buyers are willing to pay. And there's a big gap there between what the buyers are willing to pay down here and what the housing prices are up here. There's a giant gap, and that gap is growing wider and wider and wider. Wider and wider and wider. And what's going to happen is all of a sudden these prices up here are going to have to fall down to here. It's going to be a sudden fall in house prices. Huge. It's going to be huge. And when that hits, it's going to hit simultaneously to the stock market crash that's coming. Almost guaranteed. Everything is just going to fold into a deflationary funk. And this is what I've been talking about with Bitcoin. I was talking about is when this deflationary funk hits, they're all going to run to cash. They're all going to run to liquidity. And there's two forms of liquidity they're going to run to. They're going to run to gold, and they're going to run to the dollar. That's going to be their first reaction, especially the dollar, more so than even gold. Gold will probably go up a little bit, and it'll carry silver up maybe a little bit with it. Or it could just stay stagnant, or it could even lose a little bit, gold. It's possible, but the dollar's going to be the big gainer from all this. Everybody's going to run to liquidity, and people then are going to find out what your stuff is really worth. You know, it's like you get a guy and he says, hey, you know, my house is worth $150,000. Well, because of this gap I was telling you about a minute ago, he thinks it's still worth $150,000, but what could he really sell it for? Way down here, like probably $60,000. Believe it or not, because that gap is going to grow so huge, so quick. And that's why I've talked about it almost like a margin call. The whole thing is, what is your stuff really worth? What you think it's worth, what the bank even assesses it at, is not what you can sell it for if liquidity dries up in the markets. All the markets, the housing market, liquidity is going to dry up in every market, and everybody's going to want to be in cash. This is what's coming, and this is why I say even gold cash is going to be preferable to even gold. But that's not going to last very long. When this whole thing hits and they all run to cash, it's only going to last a matter of a few weeks, because it's going to be so deflationary, it's going to be such a shock to the system that the central banks are going to have to react to it, and they're going to have to yield. See, right now they're not yielding. The central banks are like a driver that's pulling onto the freeway and a big yield sign there. And you're trying to pull on. You've got the right of way, but he's not yielding. He's going to run into the side of your car, and that's the way they are right now, the central banks. They're forcing the issue. They're not yielding. They're going to yield. They're going to yield when this hits, and everybody comes at them and says, what in the heck are you doing? All of a sudden, they're going to be like blinking. Like, you ever seen a little kid, you know, when he's putting his hand down the cookie jar and he's got intent to pull that cookie out. But the mother comes along and she says, what are you doing? And he's like, all of a sudden he pulls his hand out of the jar. Well, that's the way with the Fed right now. Nobody's called them. Nobody said nothing. They're cutting off liquidity. They're just turning all the taps off, and they're in that mode right now. The tap is turning off, right? But, listen, I'm telling you right now, as soon as they're called on, as soon as the economy goes down the toilet hole, then they're going to have to come in and they're going to have to open the taps up. They're going to get called on it, just like the kid putting his hand in the cookie jar. They're going to get called on it. They're going to have to open up all these taps, and they're going to have to open them up big, because the problem's going to be big. When they do that, that's when everything's going to turn. That's when the dollar's going to start to die. And all these people that raced into the dollar when the liquidity was drying up, and the margin call and everything, and they're all got all these dollars, and they're all hoarding these dollars now. All of a sudden, the whole thing's just going to change direction. Because what they're not realizing, what's not getting into their noggins, is the fact that the Fed can make more dollars than there are leaves on the trees. So they're going to run to the dollar, and they're all going to be hoarding these dollars and fists full of dollars, and they're going to be like, hey, I got the dollars. I've just sold all my gold. I've just sold all my Bitcoin. I've just sold all everything, and I've got my dollars. Just then is when the Fed's going to turn and switch the whole thing around on them. And they're going to get caught with a fistful of dollars. They're not going to be able to get out of them quick enough, because what they're not getting, what's not getting through their thick skulls, is the fact that the Fed can make as many dollars as there are leaves on the trees. All right, and the Fed will. Ben Bernanke said, that's why he got named Helicopter Ben, is because he said that us, the Fed, to fight deflation, if we have to, we will fly over in helicopters and drop $100 bills out the window, if we have to. And what he was talking about is if the Fed is faced with a panic situation where the deflation has all of a sudden went boom, deflation, they'll come in and they'll kill it. He was already telling you they're going to kill it. And how? He's telling you how they'll kill it. And so all of these people are going to get caught with their pants down when they run to the dollar. When they run to the dollar, if you want to do good, you'll run in the opposite direction. You'll load into your to the opposites to the dollar, and they'll be on fire sale at that point. There'll be a fire sale on Bitcoin. There'll be a fire sale on all of your cryptocurrencies. There'll be a fire sale on everything except the dollar. The dollar will be riding strong. And that's the exact moment when the Fed's going to turn everything around and the dollar's going to go down the toilet hole, and all these guys that have been running into the dollar are going to get caught. So anyway, thank you guys for listening, and don't forget The housing market here is getting ready to turn over. Mortgage rates have dropped to the lowest since the election. Borrowers are not budging. They're not buying nothing. Nobody's got any money. That's because everything's drying up. All the liquidity's drying up in the system. And that's because the Fed has been tightening so long now that it's finally starting to hit. The excess liquidity in the system that they created through quantitative easing is finally drying up. And the whole thing, everything's getting ready to hit the fan in the next few months. Okay, thank you for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next show.